Welcome to Steel Bear Academy. My name is Jonathan. Today I'm going to be reviewing the first gun that I ever bought. This is the Beretta Px4 Storm in 9mm. So this is the first gun I ever bought back 8 or 9 years ago, and it has been with me ever since, and I have kind of a on and off relationship with this gun in terms of I love it or sometimes I dislike it, but I've grown a lot since the first time I shot this gun. So, this is me coming at it 8 years into the gun experience. So I've learned a lot since then, and I want to share with you what I've liked and disliked about this gun, and whether or not you think you should get one for yourself. From the get-go, I will say it's a fantastic gun, and I'm going to go into some of the pros and cons of things it falls short on and some of the things it does really well. First of all, these guns are both unloaded. I have the Beretta Px4 Storm here, and its big brother, the Beretta 92. These guns are both unloaded, but you're across the camera, so you don't need to worry about that anyway. But thank you for your concern. So this is the Beretta, and it is a polymer framed double action, single action gun. So what that means is when you load your gun, you would take your magazine, insert it into the gun, chamber a round, and that would put it into single action mode. So single action is where the hammer is back and the trigger performs one function. It drops the hammer. Single action. When you have a gun in double action, the trigger is forward like this, the hammer is down. When you pull the trigger, it will cock the hammer back and drop the hammer. So the way you would carry this gun, for example, is you would insert your magazine, chamber a round. The gun is in single action. You would then push down on the decocker here. It's on either side, by the way. You push down on the decocker. That will safely decock the hammer, and now it's in double action mode. And the reason you do this is because the gun it has a significantly heavier trigger pull in double action. You have to want to pull the trigger in order to get the gun to fire. It's not going to just fire by accident. You can put the whole weight of the gun on it and it's not going to fire. Whereas in single action, it pulls the trigger back, prepares it to be shot, and from there it's a pretty light single action pull. So it's a little more complicated than a lot of the striker fired guns that you can get nowadays. It has two modes of fire. The first shot is going to be in double action. You fire it, the gun will then cycle, and that'll automatically cock the hammer for your next shot, and every shot after that is single action. So it's always going to be single action after that first shot. So mastering that transition between that first shot, double action, to that second shot, and every shot after that, single action, is really going to be really important for this gun and every DASA gun. DASA used to be more popular of an action type. It has since fallen out of favor a lot, and many guns nowadays don't really use that anymore. Partly because of trends, just people have decided that they don't like that one as much, and that's reasonable. Probably the more reasonable one is that when you have two different trigger pulls that are so different, you're going to have to learn those too, and that adds training time. It means you have to practice more. Most people, spend a majority of their time practicing the single action because that's a majority of if you just load the gun, it's in single action. If you never actually decock the gun, you'll never go into double action. The reason we even have double action is because it's not really safe to carry the gun with your hammer cocked like this, because there's nothing preventing the trigger from being pulled, and it's a pretty light, pretty short travel of trigger. It's not super light. It's, I don't know, not exactly sure the weight, but probably at least 5 pounds. It's not light by perhaps our modern definition, but it is certainly lighter than the double action, which you really have to want it to pull it. So the double action is a safety measure in that regard. It allows you to carry your gun in a way so that you can just pull the gun out of the holster and fire. That's what the double action allows you to do. And then in order to allow for easier shots after that, more precise and easier to hit, you can have the single action. So the single action is obviously better for precise shooting and faster shooting, but it's not as safe. So that's kind of the compromise versus having an entire gun entirely in double action, if that makes sense. The reset on your trigger is decent. So if I pull the trigger and allow the trigger to come forward, right there, you can hear it, but it's almost all the way forward. Hopefully you were able to see that. It's almost all the way forward. This is the take up for your trigger and the nice clean break. It's got a pretty nice trigger, I'd say. You might be curious, why does it have all that take up? Well, the take up is right here. So I take up the slack and then I'm hitting resistance and then I pull through. The reason that take up is there is because the firing pin block is being pushed out of the way. So you can see it, it's this little peg right here. And if I pull the trigger, you should see that little peg come up right there. And it gets the firing pin block out of the way so that the firing pin can move forward. This gun is totally safe to decock with the wings here because you can see the firing pin block is not up. It can't hit when you're decocking, it cannot hit the firing pin. So it's totally safe to do this, even though people get a little concerned when they think, oh, that hammer is falling. What if it fires the gun? One, it couldn't do that because you're not pulling the trigger. And two, it also rotates this kind of little transfer bar out of the way. I'm not sure if you can see that. It rotates that little transfer bar out of the way, so it doubly couldn't do it. So it's a safe way to decock the gun. Most PX4 Storms are Type F. That's Beretta's naming convention. Type F means that the decocker here on this gun is also a manual safety. So you see the red means you're ready to fire. If I pull down on that, this would be unsafe. I can't pull the trigger. Normally, a Type F will keep the safety down like this. I'm holding it down like this. However, I've removed the detent that keeps it down like this, and so it just functions as a decocker. The Beretta 92, as you can see, it is on safe right now. This little safety shows that it's on safe. You can see the red means you're ready to fire. When I put it on safe, it means the trigger is disabled. I can't fire the gun. This gun can be modified to be Type G, which is decocker only, like I've done on this gun. However, it's not as simple. You do have to buy a kit that does it for you. This is very simple. Mr. Guns and Gear has a fantastic video on getting rid of Type F and converting it to Type G. It's very easy to do. You just need lots of punches, particularly a really, really small one, but it's very easy to do. The PX4 Storm, this is the full size, and it comes in multiple sizes. So it comes in full size, compact, which is a little smaller, and then subcompact, which is even smaller than that. Mostly in the grip dimension and the slide and barrel length. It comes in 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, and 45 ACP. There's really only 4 models available nowadays, with the exception of some Langdon tactical ones. At least on Beretta's website, that's the only ones I can see. They've got a carry model. I know they have that one that's a Cerakoted gray, but this is by far the most common one that you would see in stores. It has 3-dot sights, which are removable. They are dovetailed, so you could change these sights out if you would like. I happen to have a Beretta 92 Brigadier, which also happens to have dovetailed sights. Normal Beretta 92 FSs have a fixed front sight, so you can't remove the front sight, but you can remove the back sight. I do not believe these are interchangeable sights in any way. One of the problems with the one of the problems with the PX4 Storm is it's not a particularly popular gun for whatever reason. It's a really good gun, but it just doesn't have that popularity that many other popular guns have. And as such, it has a pretty limited aftermarket supply of parts. You're pretty limited on all the things you can change. The Beretta 92 is far more popular. You know, it was our US service pistol for a long time, like almost 40 years. So it's got a very good aftermarket supply of parts if you want to change anything. You're pretty much stuck with your Beretta Px4 as it comes. But that's not a big problem because it's a really good gun as it is. The Px4 Storm has a particularly cool feature about it. There's lots of different ways in which you can design a pistol to safely fire higher pressure rounds like 9mm or higher pressure even than that. And they all require some sort of locking device. So on this one, on the 92, it has a falling block, which is kind of cool. This is actually different than many other designs, but the barrel is able to be fixed. The gun basically delays itself from opening just slightly by way of a falling block. It's not super important to get into that in this video, but this one uses a different design than that, and both of them are very different than most Browning tilt action designs, which like Glock, USPs, SIGs, like most guns nowadays use that Browning tilting barrel design that is, I think, can be origined back to the Browning high power or guns around that era. And it basically allows your barrel to tilt up and down to allow it to delay the opening of the action. This one has a rotating barrel, which is a pretty unique design. This is not the only gun that does it, but it is perhaps the most well-known nowadays that does it. So if I show you right here, hopefully you're able to see that the barrel rotates as it locks and unlocks. It does a couple things. It allows the barrel to stay in line with your frame of your gun, which is a good thing. It allows your rounds to feed into your barrel a little easier. It doesn't have to be such a steep ramp to get up into your barrel. It also supposedly, and I say supposedly because I don't know this for sure, but my anecdotal experience definitely suggests it is true, that it disperses recoil a little bit better than the Browning tilt barrel design. It particularly reduces your muzzle flip. That's where your muzzle moves up every time you shoot your gun. It does that a little better. It reduces the muzzle climb just a little bit. I would also say it reduces the felt recoil by a bit. Not exactly sure how much. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 15%, maybe 20%. It's not a lot, particularly on 9mm, which already has pretty low recoil. Perhaps on 45 or 40 Smith & Wesson, it feels more, but on the 9mm, it definitely reduces recoil a bit. It's a cool selling feature of the gun. It's different. It's just different. Many people don't like the idea of using something different. You know, why fix something that isn't broken? Probably 90% of pistols on the market use the Browning tilt barrel design, but it's just something different and it's a cool feature. It has some downsides. It doesn't get rid of debris as well as other guns, perhaps. It's a little more susceptible to getting dirty, I would say. However, this gun, I barely ever clean this gun, and I've shot a lot of rounds through it, probably 2,000, 3,000 rounds, which is a lot for most people, but certainly not a lot for competitors, but it's quite a few rounds for most people. And I have never had a single malfunction at all in the entire lifespan of this gun. And I've shot it quite a bit, and I've not been super diligent about cleaning it. It's actually a little bit dirty right now. Reliability on this gun is phenomenal. It is really, really good. Never had any limp wristing problems. Everyone who I've ever had shoot it didn't have any problems with limp wristing. It's just a really reliable gun. I've got no no question that every time I pull the trigger on this gun, it's going to fire. Obviously, something could go wrong, you know, ammunition related, or you know, some other problem. Every gun is prone to failure at some point, but hey, 3,000 rounds with no malfunctions is pretty good so far. So I think this gun is very reliable. Normally capacity is 17 rounds in the magazine. I don't have a magazine with me. It's not in the room right now, but the one that I have is 10 rounds because this is the California version. But 17 rounds is definitely on par with many other guns in this size range. Thinking about size, this gun is kind of a hybrid size. And what I mean by that is it's got a relatively short slide for a full-size gun. If you compare it to the Beretta 92, you can definitely see that it has a longer slide. If I line up the back of the slides here, it's definitely got a longer barrel and slide on the 92. And the reason I was going to mention that is because in our modern world of different naming conventions, we have a bunch of different names for this type of gun, where it has a full-size grip, but a kind of abbreviated slide. It's not a full-length slide like a government size 1911 or a Beretta 92. This in Beretta world, they used to call this Centurion size, which is full-size grip with compact or just shorter slide and barrel. The Glock has come up with a name called the Hybrid for the G45 and the 19X and many others that they have, but they call theirs the Hybrid. The 1911 has a name called the Commander. That means full-size grip on abbreviated slide and barrel. So it's not a new design. It's not a new concept of shortening the slide. It has a couple advantages. It pulls the weight a little bit further back towards your hand, as opposed to on the 92, the weight's just a little bit further out. This would definitely be more exacerbated on a longer barreled gun. Like if you had a 6-inch barrel, it'd be even more front heavy. And being front heavy reduces your muzzle flip just a bit. It also kind of settles the gun down in a way when you're out there shooting. It means it's easier to keep your sights from drifting around. However, this type of design also has some advantages as well. It is a little lighter in total weight. Obviously you have less material on the top of your slide, so it's a little lighter. It also pulls the weight back a little further, into this portion of your hand where the weight is resting, which can be a plus side for those people who have not as strong of arms, some ladies or older folks or smaller statured people. It can be a little more fatiguing to carry, to have your gun with more length out there in the front. And that's the same regardless of whether this was a semi-auto or a revolver, a rifle, a shotgun. More weight further out is going to create more leverage pulling you down, if that makes sense. It's also a little easier to get out of the holster. If you were gonna, it takes less time to get out of a holster because you've got less material to clear. It's gonna be a little lighter, which is gonna be a little better for carry. It's not a huge deal. You still get the benefit of the full-size grip, which is nice. You'll be able to hold your gun a lot better. So there's some pros and cons. As far as the DASA mode, it's not a deal breaker for me. I really have no preference on DASA versus striker fired, for example. You just get some different features. You have to learn that extra trigger pull. You do get the benefit of the double action pull if that is important to you. If you want your gun to be more safe, for you to be less likely to have a negligent discharge, then the DA mode is going to prevent you from doing that as much. The safety on this one, which is the decocker now, I really dislike frame-mounted safeties like this. So it's mounted on your frame as opposed to many guns have it mounted on your, it's mounted on your slide. Many guns have it mounted on the frame here so that you would swipe it down right here. Let's see, it's a little more obvious on this gun. Many safeties are going to be turned off by swiping down with the thumb. That's perhaps the most common. On the Beretta, it's a little hard to just do a swipe down to hit that. You kind of have to do more of a thrust up. So rather than swipe down, you have to kind of push and thrust upward with your thumb there. I think that having a safety on these guns is not a plus in my mind. I think it's a detriment. However, when I first bought this gun, I think that I thought that it was going to be a benefit. And that's pretty common for brand new shooters, is to think that, oh, I want a safety. Safety is good. I should want a safety, right? Well, you probably don't actually. It's far more likely, I think, that your safety is going to potentially cause you a hindrance than it is to prevent something bad from happening. You know, the reason you might want a safety is that you are concerned that the gun will just go off or you're going to accidentally pull the trigger. If you have a double action pull, you can't just accidentally pull the trigger. You have to want it. So to have a safety on there is pretty redundant. You need to want it to pull the trigger. So you don't need to worry about that. If it was in single action, the safety is not going to help you in either regard, in either case. So if you have a decocker, single action is, you still have to remember to decock it. The only difference is, do I have to remember to thrust that safety up? If you were going to carry a gun like this in safe, you have to remember to thrust it up and then pull the trigger. On a 1911, you have to remember to swipe that safety off. And that extra little step can be potentially really a big downside. You know, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that they don't have to practice that very much. So if you have a gun with a safety, you should be practicing turning that safety on and off all the time. Like all the time. Like every time you load some rounds in your gun, decock it, put it off. Maybe you put it in your pocket, maybe you put it in your holster or put it on the table. When you pick it up, make sure you practice thrusting that safety off before you fire. Then as soon as you shoot a couple rounds, bang, 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 decock it. And then practice again. That repetition of practicing that all the time is really going to be important if you are ever going to decide you want to carry a gun with a safety, whether it's a Beretta with a frame-mounted safety or a 1911 with a frame-mounted safety. It's very important to practice that all the time. Don't think that just because don't think you should just turn the safety on and off on that first round and then shoot the entire magazine. Practice the safety all the time. The safety, because it has these kind of sharp wings, it really interferes with racking the slide in the overhand method. So if you're somebody who wants to rack your slide like this, it kind of is not pleasant. Like you can sort of do it, but I don't want to let it go, because if I let the slide go, it's going to drag these little sharp edges across my hand, and I don't like that. So for this gun, I've found that using the slingshot method while holding on to the safeties is my preferred method of racking these. And you see that I kind of have to fling my hand away from it, whereas I don't have to do that on pretty much any other gun without frame-mounted safeties. Like I still have to do it on this gun, but it's not pleasant to run into these safeties. The cocking serrations are here. However, because these are wider than the cocking serrations, you have to be very careful that you don't you don't want to let the slide fly out of your hands and not move your fingers out of the way, because it's easy to run into your fingers. So that's one of the reasons why the frame-mounted safety is not so good. I also find that the Beretta finish, this Bruneton kind of epoxy paint type finish, is decent for corrosion resistance. and I've never had a problem with either of these guns being, you know, getting damage from water or moisture or anything like that. However, they also are very slick, and they're pretty slick when you get any oil on them. And so these slide serrations are a little bit perilous. I get concerned when I'm racking the slide on these, because if my fingers are a little oily or the slide's a little oily, if I let my fingers slip, it's gonna dig those safeties into my fingers, and I'm not gonna like that. So you might have to adjust and decide that you want to be the slingshot method racker from now on. You can get some smaller profile safeties that reduce that wingspan here quite a bit. And I think if you were going to carry this gun, or you want to use that as a competition gun, it's a good thing. However, if you're going to keep this gun in a Type F mode where you can have a safety, I think these are a very good idea to have, because they allow you to actually thrust up on these. If they were thinner profile, you wouldn't really be able to thrust up on them with your thumb. Just something to think about. This gun also has a rail, so you can put your little lights on here, or lasers if you'd like. Just a single point, a single rail here, which is perfectly usable. The gun disassembles really easily. So it's got these little takedown levers here, one on each side, and all you have to do is pull them down. And from there, you can push the slide forward. Gun takes apart very easily. You've got a frame here, and it's got steel inserts in the frame area, in the rails here area, which is nice. So it rides on frame steel inserts in the frame, which is something a lot of people like. I definitely like that. Here's your slide. It's a very high quality slide. It's a Beretta quality slide. Here's your recoil spring and guide rod. This is the locking block that allows your barrel to rotate. So here's your barrel. You see it's got that groove cut into the barrel here. That groove is what rides on this little cam here, a little piece of metal right there. And that is what allows your slide to open and close. Let's see, like so. So it allows the slide to move forward, whoops, and rotate like so. It's a very robust system. I don't think you're really gonna have a problem with this thing ever breaking. It looks like such a small piece, but this is steel, so don't worry about that. Very nice quality slide. I don't think this is ever gonna be the limiting factor for you. Very nice slide. To put it back together, you just take your barrel, shove it in the slide. Just gotta make sure it kind of locks into its spot there. You'll put your recoil spring back into your cam system thing here. Put your little nipple there into that little channel there. Then from here, you kind of have to push forward slightly this way on this cam, and then just adjust it into your barrel. And it clicks right in place. This is as far as you need to go for, moving it around. And then you're just gonna put it right back onto your frame. Once you rack your slide, it should be locked into place, and it works beautifully. Very easy to disassemble. Let's give it some ratings. I think for carryability, I'd give this a 6 out of 10. So this was one of the first guns I started carrying, and it carries decently. It's not particularly thin, especially here on the wings. I don't think I really had much complaints about carrying it. It's a little heavy for what it is. It's not the lightest gun. I forget the weight, but it's definitely heavier than a Glock. And it's okay. It's okay to carry. If you were gonna carry a full-size gun and you want a DASA gun, this is probably one of the ones that you'd be looking at. The other ones you might be looking at are HK USP or the CZ P07 or P09. It's a decent carry gun. It's not fantastic. I think from Beretta, it's a good choice, and I think it's definitely more concealable than the 92. But it's pretty full size. You know, the grip is really the part that sticks out and prints, but it's fine. It's just a little heavy, and it's good for capacity. You know, if you have the 17 rounds, you've got as much capacity as many other guns. So I think it's good. Just loses out a little bit in the weight department. If you're somebody who likes DASA guns, then this is a good choice. If you're somebody who's concerned about accidentally pulling the trigger on a striker fired gun, then DASA might be a good choice for you. 6 out of 10 for carryability. Reliability, give this a 10 out of 10. No questions asked. It's been 100% reliable, never any failures whatsoever, and yeah, couldn't give it better glowing scores than that. Same thing with my 92. I don't think I've had any malfunctions with this gun. I really can't think of any, if any. And I've shot a fair amount through this one, so I don't remember, but pretty sure 100% with this one. But I do know for sure 100% with this, the Storm, which is nice. It's a very important feature to have 100% reliability. For the trigger, I'd give this a 7 out of 10. It's got a heavy trigger pull for that first pull. It's pretty heavy. It's pretty smooth though. I don't know if I would say it's smoothed up any at all since I've gotten it. I think it was pretty much like this from the get-go. However, I will say that what has improved dramatically is my skill at shooting double action guns, particularly after shooting revolvers for quite a while. This DA trigger is very good. This was definitely the hardest part of learning this gun at the beginning, and until I dedicated a lot of time to practicing it, it was the part of the gun that made me most concerned, because the first shot is probably the most important shot, and if you ever had to shoot somebody in double action mode, you want to make sure that your shot hits where you want it to hit. Well, until I actually practiced a ton with double action, whether on this gun or another gun, I didn't have that confidence. So I'd give it a 7 out of 10. It's not the easiest to hit in double action, but it's no harder than any other DA gun. I think that it could be a little lighter of a trigger pull, and that can be changed with springs, but it's just not amazing. I think it's good, very good, but not amazing. The trigger reach might be a concern for some people. I have large size palms, but probably, I have extra large size palms, but probably large size fingers in length. And for me, it fits pretty much right where I want it to be in terms of where my finger lines up on this gun. However, if you were somebody with shorter fingers or smaller hands, that might be a concern for you. For durability, I'd give this gun I'd give it a 10 out of 10. I haven't had any problems with it, and I'd never hear about anybody else having problems with it. I do know that I need to clean my I need to clean my extractor. That's that little claw right there. When I took this gun apart to put my to change this to Type G, I definitely could see that I got a lot of buildup underneath and behind my extractor. So I know I need to clean that, but no problems other than that. And that's not unusual. That's something you should have to clean on every gun. So 10 out of 10 for durability. Shootability, I'd give this gun a 10 out of 10. I think this gun is incredibly pleasant to shoot, and partly because it's got that rotating barrel that reduces recoil, but also I think it's just it's a pleasurable gun to shoot. I will say that the grips on this gun, the grip I should say, is very slick on the sides. The back and the front are pretty nice, like they got some grip to them for sure. However, the side panels are very slick. They offer no traction whatsoever. So when I first got this gun, I felt like it was always jumping out of my hands. I think that looking back, I think I just wasn't gripping it as tight as I needed to and wasn't using my support hand as much as I should have. Shooting it recently, I can definitely say that the annoyance that I had has gone away with this gun. It used to be that I always felt like it was slipping out of my hands, but now I think it just slips out of my hands like any other gun. One of my remedies for trying to make it more comfortable for me is to put one of these Hogue hand-all grips on it. And I'm not going to put it on, but it was on here, and I just took it off recently. And this gun, these hand-all grips have a really nice palm swell right here. So that little bit right here expands out. And so that when you're holding it, there's going to be more contact area right here and on the other side right here. And that will fill out my hand better. And also it's, obviously it's rubberized and it's got finger grooves. So all those things contribute to really locking in that gun in my hand. This is a nice fit for me. However, I took it off because I wanted to try it again without it. And I think that this is actually a little too much palm swell. So I just want just a little bit more here. However, I know that's just unique to my hands, but maybe you have the same size hands as me. I just found that it was a little bit lacking in the width department. I wanted it to be just a bit thicker here. I think the Beretta 92 is quite a bit thicker. And you can definitely change this more easily because of the grip panels on a Beretta 92. These are the Pachmeyer wood grips, by the way. So 10 out of 10 for shootability. It's very pleasant to shoot. And I think it's a lot of fun to shoot too. For value, I'd give this a 9 out of 10. These are usually around $600, even nowadays, now that the prices of guns have gone back down a little bit. Beretta 92 has been, the Px4 Storm was $600 when I bought it 8 or 9 years ago. And the same exact gun, I can see it in one of our gun stores for $600. So I don't know if that's great for resale value, but it is great for overall value of getting a really high quality gun for $600. But $600 is the same price as a Gen 3 Glock. So, is it better than a Glock? I think that it is just as good. I think that I'd probably still value a Glock a little higher in terms of overall value, partly because it has better resale value and because it's more easy to sell it to somebody else. It's not that easy to sell a Beretta Px4 Storm. Not as many people are interested in buying this gun for whatever reason. I know it's a great gun, and I think everybody who owns one knows it's a great gun, but for some reason, everybody else just doesn't seem to see it. So I'd give it a 9 out of 10. It's fantastic value for you, and as somebody who wants to own the gun for a significant amount of time, but it's not the best if you think that you might want to try it for a little bit and then sell it. You should buy one used if you're planning on doing that, because it doesn't have very good it doesn't have the best resale value. And not for quality issues, but for, I think, just people don't understand it or understand that it's a really great gun. That'd be my guess, but I couldn't say why. I just know that it's been hard to sell this gun because I've gone back and forth many times where I was like, should I sell it? Should I not sell it? It's my first gun. Should I keep it? And I still have it. So partly because nobody wanted to buy it for what I wanted them to pay for it, but I'm pleased that I kept it. I think that it is a good gun to put into maybe my training rotation or just as a fun gun to practice with. Value, 9 out of 10. What are some competitive offerings for this gun? Probably the most direct comparison is going to be maybe the HK USP. That's another polymer framed DASA gun. That gun is more expensive than this gun by quite a bit, maybe like $300, $400 more. There's the CZ P07 and P09. Those are full size and compact versions. So remember, this is a Centurion or hybrid size gun. So those guns are not direct comparisons. This gun is full size grip with abbreviated slide, those three guns that I just mentioned are all full size. The Glock Model 45 and the Glock 19X are probably the most direct comparison. Those are hybrid size guns, full size grip, short slide. Also the Glock 19, that's a kind of a compact, so it's short size grip, short sized slide and frame as well, so the grip is a little shorter. And then there's also the Glock 17, which is a little bit larger than this in the slide length. And all those guns are all competing for your money. Additionally, and obviously those Glocks are all striker fired guns. However, they are ubiquitous they compete for everyone's money for buying some other semi-auto gun. However, if you were into a DASA gun, then I definitely would be looking at the Beretta 92. The 92X that they just came out with is really cool. It's got a different size grip. This is the standard grip. They have the Vertec grip now for most Beretta 92Xs. And it's another great DASA gun. It's heavier, definitely, and it's got an aluminum frame, but it's gonna be another gun competing for your money. And it's another really great gun. So if I was gonna be recommending this gun to somebody, if somebody else came to me and they said, Jonathan, you gotta help me find a new gun, or you gotta help me pick my first gun, what do you think of the Beretta Px4 Storm? Well, I hope that they could come watch this video and see that here's the kind of highlights. It's got low recoil. It's got a double action trigger, which means that it is safer for newbies if they remember to put it into double action mode. It's got a pretty ergonomic feel to it. It doesn't feel like a Glock that's kind of blocky. It feels good in the hand. It's very easy to shoot in single action mode. It's very reliable. It's very easy to take care of, very easy to clean. However, it does have pretty small aftermarket compatibility. Because it's not very popular, it doesn't have a whole lot of options for holsters and a whole lot of options for changing things. However, if you are new to guns, maybe you just want to keep it as it is for right now, till you get a little more confidence, a little more knowing what it is you'd like in your gun. But the way it comes from the factory, it's great. This gun is basically exactly as it was from the factory, save for changing it to Type G only. I think that it was a great first gun for me, and I think it would be a great first gun for you as well. I will say that the single action on this gun is much easier to learn how to shoot than other guns that have heavier or longer trigger pulls. Like, I think this is an easier gun to learn to shoot than a Glock, just because you can kind of game the system a little bit at the beginning by taking up the slack and then pulling through that very light, crisp single action. You can sort of do that on a Glock, but it's not as easy, and you can't find as much success early on for your first gun with the Glock as you can with a nice single action gun. Later on, once you've gotten to a skill level where you can shoot most guns pretty well, then the single action on this gun is going to be one of those things where you're like, that felt really good. I really like shooting this gun because it has a really nice single action. Same thing with this gun. Same thing with the Beretta 92. I think it also has a really nice single action trigger pull. So whether you're a brand new person like I was, or whether you're a person who's really into guns and you've got some experience under your belt, I think that the Beretta Px4 Storm is one that should definitely be in your consideration. I think it's a fantastic gun, and it was my first gun, and I love it for that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.